like Apple, so I'm gonna buy some merchandise. Let's see what we can find. Wow, this rug is only $3,000. Hey guys, how are you all doing? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Crazy Ken, and today we're gonna be taking a look at some questionable eBay listings by someone who I've now been calling Mr. Polkadots, thanks to the suggestion of Steve from Mac84. So let's take a quick look at his eBay account holistically, and then we'll dive more into the listings, including this $3,000 vintage Apple rug. Mr. Polkadots' eBay account has been online since 2000. He lists mostly vintage tech items, especially Apple-related items, and a few other odds and ends, like soap. Overall, he has a very positive feedback score, so generally speaking, he's likely a decent eBay user. However, there are some listings which have raised some eyebrows in the retro Apple community. Mine included. I first discovered Mr. Polkadots when I saw this listing for a rare DVT prototype Apple keyboard for $5,000. I own several Apple prototypes and I know people who own many more, and I can confidently say this keyboard is way overpriced. Another thing that caught my attention was the polka dot background, something you don't really see in many eBay thumbnails. To give him credit, those polka dots got my attention, but again, the price was way insane, so I ignored it and moved on with my life. But probably a few months later, I saw those polka dots again, those dreaded polka dots. Just when I was browsing on eBay, there they were. So my curiosity started to grow, and I looked more into his account. And that's when I realized, at least at face value, that many of his listings were overpriced. He also listed a Macintosh Color Classic with a Mystic board for $1,700. Sure, I guess in theory, anybody can list anything for any price, and if there is a person out there who has the disposable income and they really want that thing, they'll buy it regardless. But I'm going to tell you, a Macintosh Color Classic with a Mystic board is not worth $1,700. I should know. I have one, and it was generously donated to me from my buddy Brian at Macnician. Generally speaking, if someone had something that was worth $1,700, they wouldn't just give it to somebody else unless they had piles of money like Scrooge McDuck or something. Anyway, another questionable listing is this PowerBook memory module. Mr. Polkadots claims it's rare and he listed it for $4,500. The Macs, which have these modules in them, the whole frickin' computer, don't even sell for a price near $4,500. Even Mr. Polkadots himself was selling one of them for only $1,000. And that leads us to the issue of unfair pricing and its influence. Mr. Polkadots will list these items for thousands of dollars. But what happens is someone who is selling a similar item, and they don't know how much it's worth, is just going to look at eBay. And they're going to see Mr. Polkadots listings for thousands of dollars. And what are they going to do? They're going to list their own items for a similar price. Now, these poor sellers' prices are being influenced poorly because of someone like Mr. Polkadots, who, according to this Facebook comment he made, controls the market. But some of you may be saying, Ken, look at those numbers. He clearly sold some of those expensive items. First off, if an item is purchased and later it's returned due to some issue, that may still be recorded as one sold on the eBay website. And second, just because there was a sale, that does not mean it was sold at the list price. There could have been a deal made. Then we get to this really interesting listing, and I even contacted Mr. Polkadots about this one. An Apple System 7.0 CD-ROM, which he claims to be a collectible, one rare and extremely vintage in factory packaging, and he listed it for $1,500. Okay, there's a few problems with this one. It's just a Macintosh System 7.0 installer. It's nothing crazy special. More specifically, it's part of an upgrade kit, so if you were an administrator at a school in the IT department or something like that, you can use the CD to install the system on a bunch of computers over the network. The CD itself is actually not bootable, contrary to what Mr. Polkadots falsely advertises in his listing. So here's where things get even more juicy. Thanks to Steve from Mac84, we actually found the gentleman who purchased the CD from Mr. Polkadots. According to the first buyer, the CD originally sold for $669.73 with taxes and shipping, not $1,500. And the original buyer discovered that the CD-ROM was, in fact, not that unique, and thus not worth the price, so he wanted to return it. Allegedly, Mr. Polkadots refused to give him the money back after receiving the returned item, but shortly after, eBay's team got involved and a refund was issued. And I'm not sure if the description was edited after this whole conundrum, but at one time, Mr. Polkadots wrote, "No returns please," which I believe is a red flag for an expensive item, which is hard to prove as a legitimate collectible. So this leads me to an important point. Rare does not always equal valuable. If I autograph this piece of paper, there is now only one piece of paper that is exactly like this in the whole world. I could argue it's one of a kind, but it's not rare to such an extent where it's consequently considered valuable. So that's something to keep in mind while shopping for vintage computers, or in many cases, any collectible of any category. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I contacted Mr. Polkadots about this CD. And here's what happened. I said I'm interested in the CD, but I asked him what makes it rare. He replied saying it's rare because it was produced in limited circulation, as many System 7 installers were floppy disk based at the time. Then I replied saying his listing made it seem like it's a one-of-a-kind CD, and it seemed contradictory to the fact that Apple made multiple CDs. Then he replies, "Can you show me where in my description that it says one-of-a-kind?" I thought that was a little rude. I certainly wouldn't talk to a prospect that way, but whatever. Moving on. I clarified by saying his description made it seem like it's a one-of-a-kind because he used phrases like extremely vintage and rare. I also asked him about his previous sale since eBay indicated he already sold one. I asked him if he sold it at the listed price. He replied saying somebody purchased it, but they chose not to pay. So the transaction was canceled and eBay recorded it as one sold. He also did not say how much he sold the CD for. Remember the buyer I mentioned earlier? That is likely the person he is referring to in this little anecdote. So I'm definitely getting some red flag feelings here. So after talking with more people in the community, the general consensus appears to be that not many people like doing business with Mr. Polkadots. But take that with a grain of salt, because he has a lot of positive feedback on eBay still, and these other stories, of course, are just opinions and hearsay. But because they come from sources I trust the opinions. Plus, my own experience, although it was a brief experience with him, was also not that pleasant either. There are some listings that I believe are fairly priced, at least at face value. But with all the listings I mentioned earlier, and those problems I have with them, I would not do business myself with Mr. Polkadots. Now, before we continue to the last big nail in this frickin' coffin, I just want to say, if you know who Mr. Polkadots is, please respect his privacy and do not harass him, because we're all human. Deal? Thank you. And now, we come to the ultimate grand finale. If all the other reasons I mentioned weren't enough to use caution around Mr. Polkadots, this last one will seal the deal. The $3,000 vintage Apple rug. Mr. Polkadots listed this Apple rug for $3,000, claiming it's a unique collectible and that it's vintage. Truthfully, there's likely some official Apple rugs floating around out there. I saw something similar when I was at Happ's Prototype Museum. And Apple also does have other vintage merch and employee-only merchandise as well, so this kind of stuff is not too far-fetched. However, is this eBay being truthful? Not even close. One quick search on Alibaba shows the exact same rug for only $89 and only $34 per unit in larger quantities. Huge red flag. So that seals the deal. Mr. Polkadots is scamming people on eBay with these vintage Apple products. Now again, not everything he lists is unreasonable, so feel free to buy from him if you want. But I would advise use extreme caution. I want to give a super big thanks to Steve, the MacYak community, and the rest of the Retro Apple community that helped me with this episode. Thank you very much. And if you want to help me buy more scam products, hopefully they don't cost thousands of dollars, feel free to pledge to my Patreon, and in exchange I will give you some awesome perks. Thanks in advance for your support. And feel free to subscribe for more tech episodes coming out all the time. I love doing episodes about rare and retro tech, new tech, and of course, scam tech. And hey, if you like this episode, you know what to do. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. Catch the crazy and pass it on.